I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk, now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio, he just gets my emotional corporate architecture. It's Andy Greenwald!
No, don't come too close. No kisses today.
Andy, we are going to talk a little bit about last night's completely debaucherous, drug-addled Shakespearean episode of Succession, which is by far my large adult son of television right now. I love
You just love to see it get out there.
so purely and uncomplicatedly.
Yeah.
You can't tell me shit about this show. You could not knock me off my square about this show. But bigger news, most of this episode will be dedicated to Netflix's Glow. And
a show I love also, without reservation.
And Andy had a great conversation with the showrunners.
Liz Flahive and Carly Mensch came in, as they were kind enough to do last year as well. I love talking to them about how they build the show, all the thought that goes into every character, every decision, and how being totally afraid of where you end up story-wise is a good thing. So this was a great long talk, deep dive into season 2, which I hope everyone has watched, and then get into it with this interview. But first...
Did they have any Succession takes?
You know, it didn't come up.
Yeah, well, it's coming up now.
Hard to imagine these shows existing in the same universe, but we are lucky enough to live in...
Yeah, what a great time to be alive.
It's truly, truly, truly
this show,
a wonderful thing.
I think I've talked to a lot of people who are like, oh, you know, I've watched 3 episodes and I'm still kind of like trying to get my bearings with Succession. I think you could make an argument for the last 3 episodes, so 5, 6, and 7, I guess.
No, 6, 7, 8.
6, 7, 8. Prague, Austerlitz, and what side are you on, or what side are we on, or whatever it is. It's just this remarkable leap into best show on TV contention.
It's been fascinating, and I tweeted something out last week about this, basically saying that I don't know if people understood the tone of what I wrote, which was
that tweet went mildly viral.
Yeah, well, it was just like a low grade fever, but it was basically my relationship with Succession, episodes 1 to 3, episodes 4,
pretty good.
Hey, or something.
I actually quite enjoyed 4.
I enjoyed 4, but it was like, okay, and then hey, and then wow, and then for episode 7 last week's gets Cousin Greg tattoo.
Yes.
The show is a way of getting in your bloodstream and sneaking up on you, not unlike 4 giant-sized rails of Chang as ingested on the show last night. But I also want to talk about it in a larger sense, which is I can't believe that I stuck with the show through 3 episodes, which maybe weren't in
Was it the gleam in my eye? Do you think that had something to do with it?
A little bit. I mean, but there was something, you know, this show has nothing in common with The Leftovers, although a sex boat probably is inevitable at some point. There's something was keeping me into it. Something was compelling. Also, your complete love of it and my desire to watch it with you mattered. But it's been interesting that there are many people who are simply angry at being asked to indulge episodes of a show finding its legs. Now, I'm like that. We've often talked about how we have pilot fatigue, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, one of the things you'll hear in the Glow conversation later, actually, and one of the things that makes that show exceptional is that Carly and Liz ignored all the advice they were given about using everything you've got in season 1 and built something gradually that feels like you've earned it when you get to the really, really good stuff. I actually think this might not be the case with Succession. I feel like this is an incredible example of calibration.
Yeah, so I want to talk about this show by talking about LeBron James.
Oh, that makes sense.
So a couple of years back when we used to do Grantland, the really good friend of ours, obviously, Kirk Goldsberry, who now works for the San Antonio Spurs, he wrote a piece called LeBron James Controls the Chessboard. And it was basically about how what makes LeBron special is his ability not just to obviously to be a powerhouse offensive player and do all these different things on the court, but his ability to think 3 or 4 plays ahead and to think the pass that sets up the pass. And that is what I think, without saying it's not a show it's achieved what like LeBron has in television as compared to what LeBron did in basketball. But when you really go back and see the steps they take to get these characters where you want them to get them, and I think the first 3 episodes are the most annoying versions of these people. And that's why I think some people have a problem with it. It's like Greg is actually just kind of a little bit tiresome in the first couple of episodes. Tom is kind of just cloying. He's like a little bit funny, but they're still trying to find that. Is this Veep? Is it Dallas, but set in New York? Is it some satirical version of Billions? Like, what is it?
And even Roman ejaculating onto the New York City skyline,
Although that was the moment where I was just like, the show is like going to embrace the weird part of itself.
Well, I thought that was the moment we realized it was going to embrace the ejaculate, which is really a recurring. Who knew?
Came back, yeah.
That was
Chekhov's ejaculate really came back. But the thing is that I felt like all the things that they set up with Kendall in the first 3 episodes are really paying off in these last 3 episodes. Roman's transition from being this kind of enfant terrible in the first 3 episodes to now trying to be this like, I want a win here for myself. The way that they have calibrated Tom and Greg into this kind of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, but like also just like, I can't even explain how fucking funny they are. Like when he's just like, the thing that captures it is when Greg does 4 lines of coke to stop Kendall from doing coke.
Yeah.
And Tom's reaction is, you're gonna die. But laughs because he's like, if you die, there will be so much cocaine in your bloodstream that your heart will probably start pumping again.
It's really funny. And it's really... I mean, I have to say that I've gotten some pushback from people who aren't feeling the show, who feel like because they don't care about these people, which I no longer feel is the case. I certainly care about Siobhan. And weirdly, and this is a tribute, I think, primarily to Jeremy Strong's performance, I care about Kendall.
Deeply care about Kendall.
But the point seems to be that the show is best when it's funny, and when it's serious, they're not interested in it. But my feeling is there's never a moment when it's not both. Yes. And that is a sign of an impressive tightrope act that they're pulling off. But also, look, all the best TV shows are procedurals aside, but a dominant theme among many of the best TV shows is that they're family shows, whether it's The Sopranos or whether it's Parks and Recreation. And this show has chosen a venue for its stories that is high leverage, high stakes family drama. Mm-hmm. And there are no punches pulled, and it is savage, but it is still family. And I think the show understands that and is doing interesting things with it. And particularly, it's empowered these actors who are exceptional to do even greater things with it. So that when we have a scene like the Logan Siobhan scene.
Yes.
It's
in the restaurant.
In the restaurant.
Yeah.
It's kind of a masterpiece in miniature, because it counts on so many things that we understand. One is, of course she's going to show up because it's her dad. Of course she's going to listen to him because it's her dad. And there's this moment, like there is with every scene with Brian Cox on the show.
Well, this is what I'm saying.
Where we think it's going to go one way, and we see the track being laid for it to go one way because everyone is so needy. Everyone is so fucking needy. And then it goes the other way.
But that's the thing is, like, it's like, that's what I'm saying about the LeBron comparison is off maybe, but they have set up the pass before the pass so that the Siobhan and Logan scene works at its absolute maximum efficiency. To have that come after the ATN interview with Gil makes it so that you're like, this is who this guy is. This guy sandbags someone on national television so that and asks him about his dead wife, you know, and it's that kind of level of precision. And I also want to say, we're talking about efficiency. There are no bad lines on this show, at least not for the last few episodes. You could literally pause it. I was rewatching it and I had CC on, and you would just like, I was just like almost going frame by frame, and every line from just like Stewie being like, go get a slider, like relax, go get a slider, and all of Kendall's VC tech bro startup bullshit about being engaged is just so high level. This show knows exactly what its voice is. It knows exactly what it's doing. It knows exactly where it's going. I laugh. I'm completely engrossed with the family soap operatics. I actually do find it to be quite moving in certain ways. And there's just nothing else like it on TV. I haven't loved something like this in a really long time.
I want to just go over a couple lingering questions before we
Sure. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about what you're about to talk about.
I'm avoiding that.
You want to talk about closing the loop?
I want the closed circuit. I want to talk about, one, how much extra footage is there in the editing room of Greg just like third reel of Boogie Nightsing his way through that party.
The party finds you, man.
Because he did, I mean, let's be charitable, he did an enormous amount of cocaine.
For a good cause.
For a good cause.
Yeah.
Could have been ketamine, you know, who knows? I mean, if things had taken a different turn. I feel like the show was actually quite modest, and it's showing what could happen if
He
Greg did
leveled
white
out.
drugs.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've never been to a part. I've never been to a space for emergent behaviors, so I don't really know what happens at a Romboy party. Shout out to New York City. I've never been to a day into night into morning Sunset Park loft party. I went to a couple of interesting parties in my life, but like
you never walked down a subway tunnel.
No, I didn't.
Not knowingly. And another question about that subway tunnel. Do you think there was a moment when the production staff from HBO were psyched that they were finally someone was going to pull the orgy ripcord again, only to be told in script
I felt like that was almost like
1997?
winking about.
Because there was a moment when every HBO show, in order to like meet its nudity requirements,
right, True Blood, True Detective,
they'd be like, "Let's go." It's an orgy scene, but it was not 1997, thankfully. Third point.
Yeah, I guess you've read the script for the Deadwood movie then.
Oh, is that just pure?
Yeah,
it's 1887. What happened to the Flyboys? What happened?
Those guys are just getting coffee. They can buy their own coffee.
I mean, I kind of want a webisode.
The Flyboys.
About their day in New York. I mean, that was, as someone who's had a bachelor party, I appreciated the detail of who gets to be in the boiler room and who doesn't. You know what I mean? I'm not naming names. I'm not saying you may or may not have been there, but I appreciated that small detail as well. Look, it's just.
Can we just shout out? I've been on Central European time for 48 hours.
That's where I wanted to end. I wanted to end on Connor because look, this is an ensemble writing on a high level because Connor and Alan Ruck have the thing that they do already, and we know it and we love it, and the show is writing for it. And it's great. He fucking flew in from his apocalypse bunker named after a Sebald novel / train station.
He's wearing TSA slippers.
He's wearing TSA slippers the whole time, hugging people inappropriately and calling his prostitute live-in girlfriend and thanking her for making him a pot pie.
Yeah.
That's his arc in this episode.
Great stuff.
It alone is triumphant.
Let's get it. We should. We could keep talking about this.
We're happy. It's fun.
Yeah. This is my favorite show on television. Andy's going to talk about his favorite show on television, Glow, now with Liz Flahive and Carly Mensch from Glow. We'll be back on Thursday to talk about Castle Rock and Mission Impossible. Until then, talk to you guys soon.
TV is fun again, Baranskis.
Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by the big homies at SeatGeek. Buying tickets can be complicated and confusing, but there is a simpler way to buy with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to every type of live event, whether you're catching your favorite musician on tour, shopping for the perfect gift, or searching for a last-minute deal to see your favorite team. SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. Nothing beats being there in person for the biggest plays of the year, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. I have SeatGeek on my phone, and it's by far the easiest way I've found to shop for tickets. I was perusing tickets for the ICC, the big international soccer exhibition that happens across America in the summer. And like Bayern, I think Borussia Dortmund's here, and Liverpool's here, and Tottenham's here, and all these teams. They're playing at the Rose Bowl soon. I was just looking. It's so easy. You can instantly find seats. SeatGeek saves you time and money by searching multiple ticket sites to compare prices and find amazing deals. And to get you the most bang for your buck, SeatGeek grades every ticket based on value to help you immediately identify the best seats to fit your budget. Plus, every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets on SeatGeek with confidence. Make SeatGeek your go-to app for finding the best deals on every type of ticket, from sports and concerts to comedy and theater. Best of all, Watch listeners get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code WATCH today. That's promo code WATCH for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. SeatGeek. Right seat, right now, right from your phone. Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by the Black Tux. Wedding season is upon us. And when you're bringing a date, you want to look fresh. That's where thebblacktux.com comes in. It lets you rent awesome suits and tuxedos in all styles online. With the Black Tux, you can take your style to the next level in funky, cool options like the Emerald Shawl Tuxedo and blow it out for your big one-time event. And with free home try-on, you can feel the quality and see the fit months before your event. After ordering, your suit will arrive 14 days before your event. If anything is less than perfect, the Black Tux will send you a replacement right away. You wear it, you turn heads, then you send it back 3 days later. It's easy. The shipping is free both ways. Black Tux has been draping up me and Andy for like 2 years now. For whenever we do these award show after parties, we wear Black Tux tuxes. I personally am starting to age out of the wedding season thing. Most of my friends are married. We're not going to speculate on who may have a second marriage coming. Who knows? But, that doesn't mean I can't look dapper when I have to do something. I often will just pull up Black Tux. I cop a wonderful tuxedo or suit for my special event, and I go from there. To get $20 off your purchase, visit theblacktux.com/watch. That's theblacktux.com/watch for $20 off your purchase. The Black Tux, premium rental suits and tuxedos delivered.
I am so excited and thrilled to be joined for the second year in a row here in the studio with the... Can I say, do people say glow runners? It's just right there.
Oh, nobody has yet.
Nobody's ever
I think
said
you just
that?
inaugurated it.
No.
I mean,
I've been saying this nonstop.
It's stupid that no one has said it yet,
It's
but
also-
I feel like it's very,
It's a little
we're
stupid
flattered.
also.
It is.
Stupid is our...
The Glow Runners of the Emmy-nominated Netflix program Glow, the second season of which is both brilliant and available now. Carly Mensch and Liz Flahive, welcome.
Thanks.
Glow Runners.
Andy.
Glow Runners, we're happy to be back.
Congratulations. I said Emmy-nominated.
That was the first time also I feel like that's been said into a microphone, which is...
Here's what I
Awesome.
feel about this. Let me tell you what I feel,
Please.
and then please
Yeah.
you tell me how you feel about it. I was so thrilled because I love your show. I think the first season was outstanding. This was the first season that was nominated, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Netflix is so opaque in terms of what it values and what happens and what matters and how it makes its decisions. This is not opaque. This is a fact that your show is Emmy nominated, which I know is a big deal, and I feel like that must have been both rewarding on a number of levels because of it.
It was. It was one of those, I think either to protect ourselves or because in the spirit of the show, we feel very underdoggy in a way that keeps us, I think, both honest and protected. And, we're very happy that people respond to the show, but, we don't know numbers. We don't know a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Because they don't
There's still
tell
a
you
lot
guys
of
either,
tell
right?
us. They don't tell
That's
us
very
anything.
opaque to us. And even how this would fit into any type of decision is opaque to us.
Right.
Yeah. But I think for us, the fact that the show was nominated and Betty was recognized, and then to see that sort of windfall of our crew
Yeah.
and our director, Jesse Peretz, for the pilot, and just so many people who work like crazy. Like it,
Hair and makeup,
I think it just, we know how much goes into making it. And then to just see that happen was really, really exciting.
Did you get the phone call? Is it like it's not early morning, really?
I got a
is it?
Liz
Is
phone
it?
call.
Yeah. Well, it was funny because I was like, we got to see what happens. And we were just trying to figure out where to find it. You had to figure out where it was streaming. And then my son would be dropped off at camp. And it was just like one of those normal, stupid mornings. And then it all happened and I FaceTimed you.
And I was out walking because my son and I stroll every morning.
Lovely.
And I had terrible reception, so I didn't even really know when the announcement would be coming. So I got it from Liz, which was, I think, a better.
Yeah, so we FaceTimed, and then our children immediately just wanted to see each other. So it was my daughter
that's
just
nice.
making faces at your son while we just talked to each other in the background.
Did you then get a call from Netflix where they couldn't? Were they like, that's good?
No, I think people emailed us, but we were just, I don't think
There
we
were some emails.
yes.
I think what was very nice was that the night before, Netflix sent us an email saying, whatever happens tomorrow, we really believe in the
love the
show.
show.
We love what you guys have done.
We love what
believe
you've
in
done.
you."
We won't do
which
more,
was
but we just want you to know that we've loved working with you unless things break
I would
the right
not
way.
have been
It was
surprised.
like a pre-breakup
Yeah,
email,
it's
kind of.
just so you know.
Just so you know, we still
Just so
love-
you know, we're always prepared for that
Yeah,
moment.
this is probably right.
No, as writers, you're like, just prepare for
Is
the
this the
worst.
call? Oh, it's notes. Great.
Yeah.
We're midway through the season. You're still, okay, it's
Great.
just a nice call about the next episode. Great.
Well, so the first season, justly recognized, one of the best shows of last year. Second season, we were just talking about it on the walk over here, I think is truly tremendous, like a huge step up from something that was already pretty high up. So I wanted to talk specifically about how you got into the second season. Mm-hmm. You have many members of your cast. You have many potential storylines. You have the interpersonal relationships inside the ring, outside the ring. You have the wrestling. One of the most exciting things for me to think about, and also one of the crucial things for all storytelling, as you guys know, is where are you going to build your fence? Where are you going to start your engines? What's the point you're going to pick? I imagine you had many options, and I imagine this was a source of a lot of conversation between the two of you. So could you walk me through a little bit how you ended up choosing the stories that you chose for the season and how you wanted to tell them?
Yeah. I mean, I think the thing that was really useful about season one, just to go backwards before you go forwards, is that, we deliberately chose to go slower. Mm-hmm. I think we knew really early on that we wanted to go from the audition to the making of that pilot episode. And then when we were talking about season two, it felt like picking up right out of the gate with we knew there was an order for so many episodes. The band was getting back together to make this first season. So the story of the second season was going to be the story of making the first season of Glow. So that felt pretty clear to us, I think, walking into the room.
We also had saved a lot of stories from season 1. I think Liz and I had a wish list, and we knew that based on the structure of season 1 that we couldn't find a home. But we had, whether it be episode 4, which is kind of a tale of 2 of the moms on the team, which is just one of the, I think, 20 stories that we had just walked into that room being like, I hope we find a place this season.
Yeah. And I think season 1 we also had talked about, early on when we were trying to figure out the shape, I think at one point it was like, would it be really baller to end season 1 with just a show within a show? We never break.
Yeah.
And when we got there, we're like, there's too much. We don't have that yet. We haven't earned that yet. Emotionally, it would feel like a disconnect to land a season there. But I think we always were like, we have to do an episode that immerses you fully in show mode.
Yeah.
And when you get there, you have to care as much, I think, about the people as when you were watching just an episode where you were with their characters.
And with a cast this large with such limited real estate, having more runway to get there was worth it.
Well, also, we realized that the show that we ended season 1 with was a kind of straight-up wrestling show. There's a lot of storytelling going on in the ring, but there's not a lot of interstitial kind of vaudeville elements, such as the ones that kind of emerge in the episode 8 version of the show. So we spent also a lot of the season building what the show was and kind of both drawing from the talents of the girls in the team and just kind of naturally watching what happens when you have to fill 20 episodes of television and it's very hard on your body to solely make a wrestling show.
Yeah. And I think the thing we talked about too, and a lot of discussion that was really went round and round, it was well, what is the story of the show? Do they go from being a kid's show to then trying to make it overly sexy? And it's do we plot it out in a way that feels very, very distinct, or is it a little bit more of a back and forth between what people think they're making versus what people are seeing? And so I think we were just really trying to untangle, I guess, what they thought they were making, what was being received.
Which helps us shape our season.
Yeah.
I think once we tell our kind of team story of what the larger, what they're working on, what the show is, it tends to make it easier to figure out where to slot in the smaller stories because they tend to be fed by that larger story.
Right, and each character has their own reason for being there and what appeals to them in their own journey.
Yeah.
You were referring to the show within a show, episode 8. We're going to get there. I'm sure we're going to be talking about that at length. I did want to talk specifically about some of the really, I thought, just really clever and smart things, the choices you made. And one was, obviously, it felt very timely to have a Weinstein-esque hotel room encounter. It happens to Ruth early on, and I was really struck by the fact that not only did it play so true to the character of Ruth and so true to the character of Debbie and allow us to gain more insight into them, which is just expertly done. I loved that it was essential to the larger story of the season, which, watching that episode, here's not movie of the week, but here's something you wanted to talk about.
Yeah. Right.
You found a way to make it absolutely essential to the larger story you were telling.
Because it started as part of the story. We actually, I think we've been honest about the fact that we'd actually outlined that episode before Weinstein.
Yeah.
And which is not to say
certain elements definitely changed and we were emboldened to go sort of further with the episode, I think, once things came out.
The idea of a bathtub or what's going on within the room, I think took a little shape after the Weinstein thing. But I think, we built that story kind of coming from both what we wanted to happen to Ruth this season and also what we wanted to happen to the Ruth-Debbie friendship. So we actually kind of back engineered it from that Ruth-Debbie fight then towards what types of things could kind of split them on completely two different sides of the line. In what way can Ruth's actions impact the team? We know we have this larger story of the show being moved to 2 a.m. How can we kind of tie that into Ruth?
Well, I also love that because every character you've created here is so sharply designed and considered, it probably comes rather naturally to you guys. You know how people would react to these situations because you've built them up with such thought and care. And so Debbie's response may be surprising to a 2018 audience in some ways.
Yeah.
It's in keeping with the character that you've laid out for us thus far.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think the idea of, for us was also how do we excavate things about Ruth and Debbie's friendship without we aren't going to use flashbacks. We aren't going to also rehash everything you heard in season 1 with new language. How can we get deeper into how these women connect and where the disconnect is and where the differences are without, sort of in present tense, and I think that was a great challenge for this season. And I think, like the sort of Debbie becoming a producer and then, Ruth having to take a back seat and her tension with Sam and then this incident with the network president and then moving into, the injury, just things that keep rocking them and allowing us to get underneath, that friendship. So we sort of understand them even more by the end of the season.
How do you manage Debbie? Because the character is so fascinating, so brilliantly portrayed, obviously, and you can't recreate that with anyone else. I can't imagine. She's not a heel, but she keeps making these little turns that constantly keep the audience on their toes. And you give us such insight into her by we see her in the empty house with no furniture, and then we see her talk to Ruth in a way that if we hadn't seen everything else might shock or appall us.
Yeah.
I mean, part of the ethos of the show is that there are no heroes and villains. Like this idea of being a heel is kind of a fictitious thing. And in real life, people make decisions, people act based on, sometimes a long history in a relationship or that tends to be motivated by something emotional that we can understand and that we can excavate. So for us, Debbie makes sense as a woman responding not just to the incident in episode 1 of last year where, I think rage is something that we explored a lot of season 1 and there's more season 2, but I think we wanted to explore a lot of other sides of Debbie, such as her experiences in the industry. She has her own disappointments. She has her own ambitions that I think are coming into play with a lot of just how she behaves in season 2. I think it's not just all, there is a lot of anger at Ruth, but we're trying to show you that it's more than that.
Well, there's such a smart track laid that while many of the characters are you seeing glow as a step up, she's come down.
Yeah, I think that's very clearly where we started her.
Yeah. And I think also trying to figure out how she makes it, it's sort of like, well, if I'm going to take this step, how can I turn it into something that works for me that I couldn't have somewhere else? Like where is the power? Where is my seat at the table? Like how do I use it to take a bunch of steps that other people can't? It's sort of the way that we tell a team story. And is Debbie part of the team? Is Debbie not part of the team? Is she working both sides? And I think another question we started with really early on when we were talking about Ruth and Debbie in the room, it was like, does Ruth deserve to be happy? And should Debbie have to watch it? And I feel like that is just it feels like a very female friendship question in particular. I think it sort of would let us dig into some other storylines in a way that always made us understand why we were telling it, in terms of bringing in, a sort of potential love interest for Ruth. We had to understand what that did to Ruth and Debbie because they are still like our sort of emotional spine.
Well, Elizabeth, you said about female friendship, and Carly, going back to what you said about there not being really heroes or villains or heels. And that's just another great thing about the show that you've constructed where there are heroes and heels in the ring and you can deconstruct it.
Yeah.
The idea of antagonists and antagonism in the season was fascinating for me to watch because you have something that you are embracing fully, which is this is an ensemble comedy, and the hallmark of ensemble comedies is look at this family. We can't wait to spend time with them. And there's palpable joy when they're hanging out by the pool or they're together, seeing them mismatched and getting along. Yeah. But specifically to this season, I love that Melrose and Jenny don't really get along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's something that you stuck to with that where it's not life or death.
Yeah.
No.
There was an enema. Yep. There was a jacket.
Yep.
Yeah.
They may not like each other.
Yep.
They might love each other, but it's unclear. But you stay true to the fact, you don't apologize for the fact that this is an acceptable and relatable level of antagonism in the world. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't ever go nuclear.
For sure.
It's there.
Yeah.
And I appreciated that you found a way in the midst of a larger show to stay focused on that. Yeah.
There's a meta thing going on with our show where, our show sometimes feels like a kind of magical wonderland of female empowerment. And like you go to set and they're there for other women's scenes and they're supporting each other. And I think we also just wanted to make sure in our show that we're reflecting the real world where it's not, the magical fairyland, but that sometimes people with different personalities can rub each other the wrong way. And
that's really funny.
And that's funny. They felt like two strong personalities that were very funny that they happened to be rooming together.
Yeah.
Do you have to fight the urge to just have fun with everybody? Because, even as an audience member, I find myself I don't want this conflict. I just want to hang.
Well, that's, the thing that's super fun. I remember we were shooting episode 9. Well, no, it was episode 9. It was right.
Oh, the hang where they.
It was like it was right before Thanksgiving. Like that episode bumped up right against Thanksgiving, and I was there with Phil Abraham, and we were shooting the last scene of the night, which was all the girls, talking to Rhonda about going to the consulate.
And this is Phil Abraham, who used to direct The Sopranos.
Exactly.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
Phil Abraham, he's used to family conflict.
I mean, and it's amazing because Phil is like 1,000,000 feet tall and one of our few male directors during the season, and like a virtuoso shooter. And we were shooting this, bonker scene in a motel room where Rhonda comes in and they're just trading clothing.
And there's the bong involved in this scene.
That was the next scene. That was the following scene. But it was just the girls talking, and then we sort of let them go at the end of the take and just keep playing. And they kept playing for so long that Phil looked at me. He's like, "What if we just left? Would they just keep going?" And I was like, "They definitely would just keep going. We should all just leave." And I think that is the thing where, we have so much of that just naturally in our cast. Like they love being around each other, and putting them in different combinations gives you different weird magic. And
but it's true that our show has more tension than our real life set,
That's amazing. Also, And did everyone have more ownership over their characters in year 2 and more knowledge of who they were and opinions about what they would do?
It was exciting every once in a while to see an actor, like especially if we had a new director, where sometimes a piece of direction would kind of bump them. And I think season 1 they may not have spoken up for themselves, and there were definitely times where you'd be like, very proud of an actor for kind of defending her character and then fully having put the dots together from last year to this year and kind of having filled in emotions that maybe we haven't explicitly told them, but they're lined up perfectly.
And I think every time, and I think it'll be true as we, our hope is to, by the end of the series, all these women deeply. Yeah. And I think, this season we got to a few more people more completely. And somebody like Kia Stevens, who is a wrestler turned actor, to watch her dig in, to watch her
scene work,
develop, the way she, you could just tell how much she paid attention to season 1 in terms of the other actors, in terms of what directors were saying. Like she just sponged it up and then came back and nailed stuff in a way that, it's amazing.
I have to say, and this probably speaks to my poor Googling or Wikipediaing, but I didn't realize that Kia was the woman in your cast who was a wrestler before.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome con.
I just thought, how did you find this wonderful actor?
Yeah.
And obviously episode 4, the episode you're referring to as a motherhood
extravaganza,
is a real showcase for her.
Yeah.
And I wanted to talk about that episode specifically, not just because of her performance, but because, again, in I don't want to say small ways, in subtle ways and in always entertaining ways, it shows the two of your ability to zero in on difficult parts, uncomfortable parts, not shying away from it. Yeah. And I reached the end of that episode, and I'm probably not alone in this. I sat back and thought about what had happened with the welfare queen character in front of her son, and I thought, I don't know. I don't know if they answered this or if they. And then the next day, I was still thinking about it, and I was like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
It's actually a much stronger play to admit that the two of you, a television show, you're not going to solve anything. What you can do is, I imagine, please speak to it. You can attempt to have the character speak in an emotionally true way to the character, to the other character in the scene.
Yeah, she's wearing one of the most uncomfortable stereotypes on the show, and it's something Kia has done in wrestling herself. We were never going to ignore that, but I don't think that we were going to solve the problem of racism in wrestling, because that's kind of what wrestling is built on and how it works. And you're uncomfortable when you see those stereotypes, but also it's a kind of weirdly safe place where you can say the stereotype. It's ugly. You can say it and you can look at it and you can see it for what it is. And there's no kind of whisperings about how someone is perceived. There's this very ugly thing and you have to confront it because you have to say that you have to own it. And I think, we were pretty uncomfortable by it. We were excited, but it also felt like a completely separate piece of her identity to this other thing, which is what she's been for most of her life, which is a mom to this son, which is she's been wearing this stereotype for a year.
Yeah.
And she's been a mom for a lot longer. And it felt important to kind of show that side of her life.
Yeah, and have those two things. I think also in that episode, in a similar way, Debbie's sort of narrative and looking at sort of the idea of a mom with a baby and and sort of exploding her world a little bit felt really exciting at the same time. Like I think there were things about Debbie's story that were also hard to look at, you know, and just sort of like what is motherhood? What is being a good mom? What is being a bad mom? You know, and
how are those stereotypes outside of the ring?
Yeah. And so I think we were just trying to figure out how to allow those stories to play together. And then I think the benefit of that story in sort of a larger character arc was just that we got these two wonderful characters to really be in a story together that made a lot of sense, not just in the ring, but we could build stuff outside the ring that felt like, you know, Teme and Debbie had a connection that was different and deeper than other people, you know, working on the show.
But that Debbie could also have a blind spot and not see how it was hurting Teme, which was kind of like an amazing moment where you watch her kind of like have the kind of late realization of what just happened and how maybe they had planned it and it sounded funny one way and it felt very different.
In action.
Action, in front of certain people. I think there's a very ugly moment in that episode. And I think the fact that like we just showed it for what it is like it makes sense in a wrestling ring theoretically, but then to play it feels very different. Felt important to us, and I think Kia did it so beautifully that you see so many layers of what she's struggling with, but also like life goes on afterwards. She's still a mom. She's still on the show.
She's still a performer. She still wants to perform. You know, it's
she's
like
still good at performing.
She's still good at performing. You know, I think that's the thing that's so tricky. I think the trick of that episode is how great that match is. I mean, and we really talked about it like that. I think that is the longest match we ever shot, and it was a full day of shooting. And you know, to get all those beats, to get all of that wrestling is like intense in terms of the stuff that they're doing physically.
It was emotional just watching them do that match.
And in terms of Debbie's motherhood, I when I was a full-time critic, I would often talk about children, or especially newborn children on TV shows, as great unforced errors of TV shows, because everyone wants the drama of pregnancy and childbirth, but then they don't want to deal with a child. And
this is my third show now with baby actors on it, and I'm like,
well, right, and then you actually have to deal, right. But I love that you will not ignore this because she is making choices every time she does anything, which many of us are in life.
Liz likes to joke that since I had a kid, I'm like highly attuned to certain things, like the baby had an 8 p.m. call time, and
Kylie was outraged.
I was having a breakdown.
I was like, "Where the fuck was this energy last season?"
But he
when
was
no one had kids but me. But he's right there. It's like he's fine. These kids are all disasters when it comes to bedtime. We're okay. He's getting paid.
I'm still going on record saying we shouldn't have hired a baby for 8 p.m. acting.
This is first kid, second kid energy, though. I have
exactly.
to say. I think when we last spoke,
100%.
When we last spoke, I was you, Carly, and now I am you, Liz, and I'm like, that's fine. They're going to go to bed. What are they not going to sleep? It's fine.
We're the ones suffering. Who cares?
Exactly. It's incredible.
Learning a lot at this table.
That tracks.
Yep, it does.
Speaking of the ensemble, I wondered if it was delicate in any way behind the scenes bringing in a new member of the family, because you have the new, I don't want to say improved, you have a new junk change in season 2. Adding to an already swelling cast was a decision.
It was like the literal opposite. I mean, like,
we were shocked.
It was like we had, and I think we, like anything, we take care in casting people who feel like they are. We weren't trying to cast somebody who was going to blow up the group. We wanted somebody who ultimately we were telling the story of she got sucked into the group. So I think that, Shakira has lovely energy and was great. And the girls just all sort of swarmed her and brought her into wrestling training. And Sidel Noel, who plays Cherry, was so welcoming and so amazing and like took her as her date to the SAG Awards. It was like
it's the exact opposite.
It's like the Babysitters Club on set. And then we do all the other stuff that we do. But
I think we were going to check in with Allie to see how Shakira's fitting in, if we needed to kind of welcome her more, and it was just, we love Shakira.
Yeah.
Well, she was great. She's a great addition.
Yeah.
But it's nice to hear that, because I would say to learn that's happening behind the scenes, because purely as an audience member, I feel that you two and the rest of your staff are doing that for these characters. I was thinking about how much I care about Cherry and Keith.
Yep.
Yeah.
I care about them. I'm emotionally invested in it. Every time Keith is on screen, I'm like, what's he thinking about? He's having such a good time this week.
Bashir is such magic.
But
it is.
And their marriage is something, I think, just because I feel like we don't get to have, there aren't a lot of marriages on the show. So I think
But I love that
we
you
invest
can
in
look at it. I feel like there's a way to look at this. However many cast members you have, storylines, relationships.
Yeah.
you could think when the feeling could be we're being overwhelmed with information, or you could say, oh, there was a moment for them here.
Yeah.
And there were moments that we didn't see prior to this and moments we don't see afterwards, and you pick your spots.
Yeah.
I mean, our number one priority is to make you care. Then comes plot.
Right.
We're going to use the plot to do that.
Straight up. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the type of storytelling we care about. And
two more actors that I care about and the characters I care about specifically. I wanted to talk about Marin in year 2. We talked about him a lot last year, and what a totally wonderful surprise he was.
Yeah.
This year, also, I just want to say congratulations on finally adding someone else to the Italian, but come on, he's really Jewish Hall of Fame. George Costanza was lonely there for a while, and now Sam Sylvia joins him.
Mark is very like, oh, he's really Italian?
It's like,
we're like, man.
Yeah.
This year when he says it, I'm like, okay, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, I love it,
but there's
a mustache.
There's Jewish Italian overlap and like a cultural.
There's a big city vibe. There's a
Yeah.
hand talking kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, I'm a fan of that. But again, I looked at him as someone who, you know, he's more of a mess in season 1. Obviously, he's doing a lot more drugs, or at least we see him doing more drugs. And it was great to see that you could still use him as an engine for conflict, or for being demanding or unreasonable, or so emotionally naked that you just can't turn away, while also acknowledging how lovable he is in this part. I feel like that's the kind of balancing act for writers that isn't often acknowledged. We love being with him, and you didn't run from that.
Yeah.
How did you approach him in year 2, knowing what you had?
I think we just I felt like we had great stuff sort of teed up for him. You know, I mean, he was somebody who was going to have to, in the beginning of season 2, make 20 episodes of a wrestling show with all women that he had never sort of had a real, like, it's like a guy who never had a real show up for work every day and knock these things out kind of a job. And then he also had to be a parent to a teenage girl. So just like what was going to hit him
was rich.
Was really rich.
We were also never not going to write for his character. I don't think it was ever like, this is a show about 14 women and, oh, Mark is surprisingly talented. Let's start writing for his character. I think, you know, he's as much a misfit on this team as anyone else, and kind of digging into both like his disappointments, why he's here, what he's getting from it, what he's learning from these girls felt very important to us. Yeah.
How do you feel about this potential romance that you tease and you walk away from with him and Ruth? I'll just let you know, I think you made the right decisions in season 2. I was just curious from a writer perspective how you intended that to play. I
mean, there are a couple things, right? I think, we're responding to a thing that feels like it's happening on the camera, you know, in front of you.
You put them in a car together. Something's going on.
Yeah, it's like, I think there are certain actors you just put together and you're like, there's something underneath this. And whether, where you walk up to and where you go with that is the fun of it too. Like they are not the will they, won't they. Debbie and Ruth are the will they, won't they. And I feel like that doesn't change. But I think there's something to this idea that when you work with people or you get like ripped open in a way that you don't expect, and then you're, you know, for the first time, I think a character who is, you know, season 1 especially, like a misogynist who makes bad decisions, surrounded by women, and then having to work with somebody who he sees value in, like and that's going to do something to him, and he's going to respond like a human person, and like it's not a manipulative like romantic plot line. It's like this happens, and then what does that cause in somebody else?
Also,
you know?
his wiring is old-fashioned. He's never respected a woman as a peer in the workplace.
No, I don't think this is a guy with female friends. Right. You know, so it's like, what do you do when you feel, you know, intimacy or connection with somebody, and that person's not a dude for the, you know, it's like, and you're actually working together. I feel like it's messy.
It's messy.
Yeah. It's complicated. It's interesting. It's human. And I think that's the thing that's really, really interesting, you know, and that we talk about.
Yeah. And I think we've seen this in theater, and it happens in this industry too. I think it's just, they're very, like, the lines are very loose, and it's very messy when you're performing and when you're not performing, when your heart is open, how to shut it back down when the show is done. I think there's something like particularly interesting just in kind of the showbiz storytelling world about kind of where the lines are, how you understand where the lines are, how you understand real emotion versus
play.
Yeah, I think it's confusing in a very interesting way.
Not to give the impression that I am shipping one way or another. This is a very sober
can
podcast.
I just say,
I am not.
I got to say, though, shipping was something I didn't even know existed. And Marquita Robinson, one of our writers, was talking about it. And I was like,
what?
Yeah, it's a thing.
I mean,
we had to learn it in the writer's room.
Yeah, it was like grandmas had to learn what shipping was at the top of season 2.
I was like, why wouldn't you just say they like each other? Like, you're rooting for them to get together.
I mean, this was legit the conversation.
What does a ship have to do with it?
That doesn't fit in a tweet? Come on. Nope. I mean, we're living in a world where New York Magazine will be like...
somebody? There's just a lot of ways I would have done it other than the word ship.
Yeah. Or, well, I mean, New York Magazine will literally do headlines like, squee, we want them to be... I'm like... Let's be sober adults about our fictional characters falling in love or not.
I'm going to admit that I don't have Twitter, so this is all
all news.
Another great decision made by Carly.
It's true.
Revealed today. Just have to wonder though, do you think Sam Sylvia would have better luck with Ruth were he to let the beard part grow out just a hair behind the mustache part? Because that's clearly something Ruth appreciates. And as someone who lived in the 80s,
Look, we're going to leave this hypothesis on the table, but say we're a fan of Sam with that level of facial hair. We've seen it bigger.
Yeah.
He becomes a bit more Mark Maron and less Sam Sylvia, the bigger his beard gets. So we're very careful to keep him.
I just love that you found a guy who looked like every camp counselor I had in the 80s. To play
he wears a lot of shirts that were like
Victor.
Yeah. I mean, oh my God.
Yeah. No, I mean, he is...
That is just chef's kiss emoji. That is perfect.
We agree. I mean, he looks like he was just plucked out of an 80s movie. And it is just Victor's look, but I also think Beth Morgan helped a lot. She's like, I think he's like sweatshirts. Like sweatshirts and jeans. And we're like, She's like, but like all the time sweatshirts and jeans. And we're like, yep, that sounds right.
That's right.
Victor Tassay is a writer that Liz knew. I mean, he writes on Big Mouth. He's a writer-director.
Yeah, he's made a bunch of movies.
But I think performer is kind of the last on his list of...
Yeah. He was, when we brought him into audition, he's like, this is hilarious, guys. Like, what am I doing today? Reading the scene with Allison Brie. We're like, yeah, go ahead.
Incredible.
He's great. Because we wanted a real I think that was the other thing. Like, we didn't want, and I think Victor is adorable, but we didn't want like a supermodel actor to swan in and be the camera guy. And you're like, I wonder what's going to happen. Like, he feels like
a real person. We're very allergic to both kind of fake romantic tales and then also just this idea of what people are supposed to look like. And I think our show tries to very accurately represent like real people. But I think that becomes trickier when you're casting a quote kind of romantic lead. When you're like, no, he's a camera guy. Yeah. He should look like a camera guy.
He
shouldn't look like the person who will eventually kiss Allison Brie. He should look like the camera guy.
Who will also
eventually kiss Allison. But it's like,
but we don't want to tell you that.
Maybe it should be because of like who he is.
Well, this is some radical stuff you're pitching on this podcast.
You know, I mean, I think
Does Netflix know about this?
They do.
This seems off.
They do.
Wow.
But it was like, you wanted like a guy, a real guy.
He's just a guy.
A real nice guy.
He went out for tacos.
Yeah.
He's just a guy.
Yeah.
I saw him this morning jogging on my street.
This is ripped from real life.
Real life.
I also want to talk about Chris Lowell, who plays Bash, on two levels. One, the performance, but also he is, I know that the rules of like who's in the cast, who's not are arcane, and I'm not going to ask you to define them for the audience now. He is technically a guest star on the show.
Yep.
Can you talk why this particular guest star is so essential to what you've got and what you're planning on doing with the show as a whole? Because his role, his storyline in this season was surprising and really, really compelling.
Yeah.
His title is like technicality based on the fact that he was on another show.
And we couldn't own him.
We couldn't. But from the beginning, even in our pitch to Netflix, I think we knew that the guy who owned the league and who was paying for it would be kind of one of our main people. And we knew we had a lot more layers for him that season 1 we didn't really have time to get to, but we hinted at with some kind of glitter eyeshadow was our...
And we knew he could do it. Like as an actor, like Chris has like a remarkable amount. Like, he's incredible comic timing. He's so nimble as a performer. He and Allie are so precise. Like I think that's something I think they really share. I think they're very different performers, but they are like precision machines in terms of like and what they hit and when they hit it and how they do it. I love that.
And he's also someone, and again, because we have such a large cast, we kind of leaned into different people season 1, but I think he was the person who was kind of most dangerously verging on caricature if we didn't start to show you the other layers that we had intended.
Yeah, he owns a robot. He has a mansion. He has a helicopter. You know,
I don't think when he got the script for episode 3 last year and we told him all of these layers and then we're like, no, but really you're just like a rich playboy in a mansion that's throwing a drug party. I think like kudos to Chris for trusting us when I think we revealed our full intentions for Bash when we originally cast him, and then kind of sneaking them into his performance in season 1. I think there are things that he does just in terms of like where his hands are in any scene. Who he's touching, what he's touching, how he's pretending to smoke, how he's trying to imitate Sam. I think there's a lot going on season 1, but then we had a lot more room season 2 to start showing you.
I did want to the way the both of you speak about the show and how you're building it is particularly interesting to me, because you are talking about building things slowly and gradually, and talking about how season 2 will, of course, build on what season 1 laid for you. There's something that I've heard often in TV. Obviously, I think these are older thoughts from when TV was structured differently and seasons were ordered differently, but that you can't leave anything on the board. You cannot leave anything. You got to give everything when you have a chance, because who knows when you'll have the chance to do it.
Which we've been taught, by the way. Like we were breaking our own rule. I think even Genji was kind of like, guys,
Genji Cohen, who you worked with,
we might not get you leave nothing on the table. And I think first we just kind of took a blind leap, but we also knew that there was so much storytelling, slow storytelling to be done, both because you could never kind of, once they learned how to wrestle, you could never go back. And that's such delicious storytelling that it felt kind of like a waste to shove it into 2 episodes and then kind of speed along. And because we have so many characters to set everybody up, we knew the journey would be so much richer, would be so much we would just have so much more if we had a better foundation, and we kind of just took that. Yeah. We took that risk, kind of breaking everything we've learned in TV in terms of where...
It's risky, but it results in a second season. I mean, second seasons are always red flags, and people are concerned about them because all the story's been built, and now you have to do everything you just did, but faster and, again. But you confounded that expectation because you had such a steady base and more to add to it.
I think that's true. I mean, we definitely... Everything we wanted to put in season 2 is in season 2. Yeah. Season 2 is full.
It's very full.
There are a couple things we didn't get in there, and I feel like that's,
we left nothing on the, boards for that.
As we were breaking that finale, we were just we were like, what do we have to do?
Yeah.
And also just what do we want to?
Yeah. Just going back to season 1, like I also think like we knew we were taking on this sport that a lot of people had very specific reactions, often revulsions when they heard, or just kind of like, I don't want to watch, I don't understand it.
And they're probably still, and I think there are probably still people who haven't watched the show who are like, I'm not really interested. You know?
Which is why we're like, if we're going to kind of deconstruct this sport, if we're going to like teach it to everybody and start from scratch, like say you don't understand any of it, and kind of get everyone on board for this larger thing we're doing is like, yes, there's wrestling, but like we're going to get you inside of it. We're going to show it differently. We're going to kind of use it differently than you might expect. And I think a lot of season 1 did that, in addition to just a lot of character work and a lot of, I think we kind of got people on board with wrestling.
I think it's absolutely true. Yeah. A couple more things to get through that I can't not speak about. One is, I know that we could do a whole podcast just about Alison Brie. I'm sure people have asked you to do that.
We'd be happy to,
just to say again, I think her performance on the show is one of, if not the best performance on television. I think it is astonishing in every moment. Specifically, what I wanted to talk about with her, which I was just watching this year, is I don't know. I mean, first of all, I don't know how she does any of it. But specifically, I don't know how she can give us a character who is emotionally alive and vibrating, honestly, in every moment, playing comedy and drama at the same time, but also radiating with joy about being there. Which is infectious and increases the enjoyment of the show exponentially, because she's clearly having fun when she's Zoya, which is awesome, because theater people love to do accents. We know that. But every scene, she just seems to be thrilled to be there. And I don't even have a question. I marvel at it.
I feel like she's
like that every day.
She is. She's a miracle. Scene. She's like a total miracle. She's such a team captain. She also just has that thing where I feel like, it's sort of, it's the meta reality of like Allie and Ruth, where it's like once Ruth got Zoya, it was like it unlocked the magical, Pandora's box of performance. It was I think that's sort of the story in season 1, and I feel like in season 2 it was about getting her back into the ring after her fallout with Sam. And I think, when it's a story about an actress who hasn't worked for a long time and finally gets a shot. Which is, I think, the foundation of that character. It's like, I think the thing we always think about is like there were 10 years where Ruth couldn't get hired. And there's like a desperation to that. There's a sadness to that. There's a hunger that comes from like when you finally get the job. And I don't know, like she really holds on to that in a way that is so amazing. And I think that's the joy too. I think it's like I get to go to work.
And finally take the cork out, and it's just finally
completely as that.
I think
character.
it's because on the surface, Allie, and I think we are open about having judged her in this way. Like I think she's worked on some amazing shows. She has been working, but she also has been put in a box. I think she's also been underestimated, including by us when she first auditioned for the part, and we thought of her in one way, and I think she has so much more to offer, and we're like. I think we're giving her that chance and also listening to what she wants to do because I think she's held back so much that it's like there's a joy to, as Liz said, finally getting to use those tools and to kind of play and share.
And do all of it.
Do all of it. Yeah, we're never saying no to her. If she has an idea, we want to hear it. If there's a new side of her we can show, we want to show it. If there's a new, she has a lot of skills beyond, physical skills. I think she's telling stories with her body in a both dramatic and comic way that's phenomenal.
I mean, one of the things I love watching the most actually is when she, after episode, 6 and 7 for me is like, I love watching her performance. I love watching how small she feels holding on to that, the secret about Tom Grant and how, she comes back sort of alive after that conversation with Sam, and then she's in the ring with Debbie finally again, and you see Allie as Ruth starting to get thrown by Debbie's behavior in the ring, and those little flashes, and like how she gets thrown. I don't know. It's just like it's so beautifully calibrated.
Yes,
and so specific, and never too much, and. I think we have a bunch of actors who do that. But I watched that arc, and she's
so precise.
She's so precise,
smart
and it's so beautiful. And I feel like it's why it gives us the freedom also to when you finally walk them out of that hospital to feel like you're like, yeah, let's go.
But also there's this beautiful moment that you constructed, the two of you, that the energy that is her performance, it feels like it's leaching into everyone else now. And, we're going to speak about 8 now, but the end of 7, I believe, is when everyone comes in to cheer her up in the hospital.
Yeah, it's the middle. Yeah, it's like the middle of 7.
No, but it's in 7.
Yeah.
In the hospital.
That is as much, that was as much fun for me as 8, because you can suddenly tell everyone's playing. And everyone got a turn. And that must be such a joy on set and off set as well. And that flows from, I can't call her Allie, I've never met her. So Allison's performance. Into 8. And so you finally get this chance to have these people play. You finally get a chance to, in your room, play. You could do anything, right? How much fun was it? And then how awful was it to have to start snipping ideas, if that's the case?
We didn't snip as many ideas as you'd think. It's an overpacked episode.
Yeah.
I think we knew we were going to get one chance to do this, so we were going to, jam it with every idea we had. But we also weren't going to kind of just throw in sketches for the sake of funny sketches.
Right.
We very purposely built our season so that we were setting up stories that we could either further in the show or build forward from there. And we started with just what would say this group of women was sitting down to make a show together. What would each one of them pitch? What would each one of them want?
What would they petition Sam for? Like, what would he?
Right.
Yeah.
And how would they do it? Who would let them do it? Were there ideas that didn't make it? Was there, Melrose is obviously going to want to do a music video.
Yeah.
Sheila's, if you speak to Gail, she's very much responding to the Tom Grant situation with Ruth in her sketch with the goat, even though it's one of my favorite stupid, silly sketches of the whole episode.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Who was operating the hooves in that?
That was Nick Jones.
One of the writer of the episode.
Oh, he's a puppeteer as well.
Exactly.
I heard you guys when you were talking to Mark last year.
Yeah, and we had a moment where, it was the other thing about that episode that was both in the breaking of it and then in the writing of it and then in the conceptualizing it and then the shooting of it was we are not trying to comment, but it needs to be a certain level of jank. It has to be a certain level, but like just the right level. Because if you push it too far, you're putting too fine a point on it. And the hooves were actually a thing because our props department
is a
world-class props department. And so here are the goat hooves. I'm like, those look very realistic. We need fur and duct tape.
You need to take it down.
We had to take down a lot of things.
Yeah, there are a bunch of things. I'm like, this is beautiful. We need to scrape away these 2 panels from the the outside of the
Castle.
evil fortress.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Like we walked in, it was like me and you and Nick and Rachel. It was an amazing thing. We're like, too good. I'm like, let's just move these panels. Yeah, and we looked at it, and then you saw the rock wall in Melrose and Jenny's room because you also wanted to feel. You have to know where they are.
How they made it.
Yeah, I think for me the most underappreciated moment is when they're doing the music video, the We Are the World video, and Sam and Bash show up as the kidnappers. Mm-hmm. Never commented on.
Nope.
Never explained.
And the kidnapper herself, Ruth, is.
Oh, that's
because
right.
you're like, there's no way she wouldn't be in that.
See, it's even. Yeah. I didn't even appreciate it. But I said this before about almost in jest that theater people, like actors, love to do accents. They love to add on these layers and play dress up. But you were both from the theater. You're both playwrights. And I say this as a former theater kid myself, that there's so much fun in putting on a show and playing.
Oh, my God.
And the opportunity to do it. I mean, that's why everyone gets into this, right? Well, and this episode is this joyful expression.
I think wrestling has it, and we're kind of acknowledging it in other ways and finding ways for them to let it out. But I think it's part of the ground wall of our show in terms of like where the joy comes from. Like, I think that's why everyone, even though none of these actresses that wanted to be on a wrestling show, intended to be in wrestling, and maybe never even heard of wrestling, are kind of finding this weird outlet to, put on a show.
Yeah.
Let me end with a statement of gratitude and a question, a forward-looking question. The statement of gratitude is thank you, both of you, for acknowledging the masterpiece of my childhood, Muppets Take Manhattan.
No problem.
It is my number one homesick movie because it was always on TV. Mm-hmm. I've seen it more than maybe any movie ever, and introduced my older child to it. Still plays. The fact that you did the Whisper campaign from Sardi's in a television show means I feel seen. I really appreciate that.
I mean, we are in our own way making our own version of a Muppet show. Like they're Muppets in many instances, and
just finally admitting it.
Yeah, we're just finally putting the English on the ball. No, that's a spin. I feel like it felt very clear to us that would be something we need to reference.
Tremendous.
Clearly.
Tremendous. Even in the way the woman who finds the tape in the bathroom reacts to it. I mean, I think I'm not going, well, maybe I will, but when they're doing the Whisper campaign for Manhattan Melodies in Sardi's, the actors or the extras who are in Sardi's saying, Kermit the Frog.
No. I mean, at some point in editing, we were like, we got to watch out with these reaction shots because it looks like the entire convention is sold by this.
They are. This is the most successful thing ever.
Every single person is turning their head and like, wait a minute, what did he say? Even though he's 400 feet across the room.
It's terrific. Finally, Vegas. Why? What are you excited about? I believe about going there for. What does that do for your storytelling? Because again, it makes sense for the show. Yep. You've done everything for a pilot, everything for a season.
Why would we want to go to Vegas?
Well, no, maybe that was the question from my heart. No, I mean for the story, for where you guys are going. We don't have any official news of a third season.
We do not,
but we are hopeful. And
I mean, in just talking about me and Carly, like Vegas is a place that makes us super uncomfortable.
Yeah, I felt like we could all relate.
Yeah. As like I am.
Liz has rebelled against Vegas by once reading a book.
I once went there and was left there alone for like a whole day and got so depressed that I was like at one point walking through a casino crying, and then I just found a lounge and
You're not the first
found
to do
an
that,
apple and read a book for like 4 hours.
I hope it was like Thomas Paine or something.
No, I don't even know what. I cannot even remember what it was, but it was just I was like, get me out of here.
And our decision took that into consideration, and in fact is built on that. I think like we originally got excited about this show because it made us uncomfortable. The idea of women in bathing suits, performing for a majority audience of men was deeply unsettling to us. And I think we've gone 2 seasons now, and it started to not feel as uncomfortable. It's starting to feel kind of like, it's normal that everyone walks around with no pants. Like, that's just the world we're in. But for us, it felt important to keep jarring ourselves and keep going places that made us deeply uncomfortable, and there's nothing more uncomfortable to us than Vegas.
And I think
especially for women, especially for women in the 80s, especially for just desperate performers. It felt like a very ripe and like a kind of like hair-tingling place to send them.
And yet the exciting thing with the show is that like the idea of live performance versus a taped television show, the idea of like, being in Vegas as all these big showgirl shows are like just slowly dying. It's, pre-Steve Wynn coming in kind of a thing. It's like, what does that look like with our cast? What does that look like with our people. And I think also in the sort of Cohen tradition of like, there's always more road, there's more story. Keep pushing.
Yeah, don't get complacent in a place. Like we shoved every idea we had.
Be scared as you walk into a new season. Like it's good. I think it's really good for us to not.
Yeah, I think we're
stay in LA.
Well, thank you for giving such a great example of fearlessness on the screen, and also just a model of female relationship drama and comedy, and how the two can't exist without the other. But also just that the show, to me, it's so smart and it's so emotionally affecting, but it's so entertaining. And I think that I said this all the time as a critic. I say it all the time now. That shouldn't be such a hard point to geolocate. That TV should be entertaining. The art we make there should be joy in it.
Yeah.
But you can also say things.
Yeah.
I think it's a remarkable example of when that's done successfully.
Thanks.
But also thank you for doing my podcast.
We're happy to
really
be back.
Appreciate it. And if and when, well, let's just say when season 3 happens.
Let's all knock on
if
some.
and when we will be.
I hope you'll come back.
Delighted to come back if you're not too busy with your show on USA.
Oh, well, I'll go on your podcast.
Okay, great.
That's how we do it, right?
Well, now we've got to make a podcast.
I know. It's like
oh God,
it wasn't on our list.
You guys a little downtime, right? Thanks.
Thanks.